So folks, we can kind of clump together a little bit more in this area, kind of scoot down a little bit, we're going to clump together. But we're going to keep this walkway here clear because it's a fire hazard. Yep, perfect. Now folks, we're going to flash back to September 2nd, 1945. I'm going to tell you about this photo here behind me. Now it is an overcast Sunday in Tokyo Bay, Japan, and the USS Missouri sits in her waters. Now on board the Missouri, officers stand in their assigned positions as the Japanese delegation board the ship. Now after the arrival of all the Japanese delegates, 3 men would emerge from the admiral's quarters: General Douglas MacArthur, Admiral Chester Nimitz, and Admiral William Halsey. They would emerge from behind that white canvas, descend those steps, and take their places where you're standing now. Now the ceremony would begin at 9:02 in the morning with a brief opening from MacArthur. And in his speech, he would choose not to speak ill will or violence against the Japanese. But instead, he would choose to speak of freedom, justice, and tolerance. Now these words were met with great relief by the Japanese delegation, and also great respect, especially by number 27 in the photo, Mr. Toshikazu Kase. He was the English translator from the Japanese delegation. He was actually the only person on board that day that spoke both English and Japanese. Now when it came time to sign the documents, MacArthur would call over to number 22, Foreign Minister Shigemitsu, and number 24, General Umezu, to sign for Japan's unconditional surrender. So the first person to sign would be the Foreign Minister, and he would sign on behalf of Emperor Hirohito. Second person to sign would be General Umezu, who would sign for the Imperial Army. The third person to sign would be MacArthur himself, who is pictured as number 1 sitting at the table. And he would sign as the Supreme Commander of the Allied Powers. Now on this day, MacArthur would use 6 pens to sign the 2 copies of the Instrument of Surrender. 2 of those pens he would donate to the 2 men standing behind him. Now on this day, both of those men stood at over 6 feet tall, but neither of them weighed close to 100 pounds. Now, number 2 in the photo is Lieutenant General Jonathan Wainwright, who was captured in Frigador. And number 3 in the photo is British Lieutenant General Arthur Percival, who was captured in Singapore. Now, the typical lifespan for a prisoner of war in the Pacific was less than 6 months. But both of those men endured more than 3 years. And they had been released days prior to the ceremony. They were there to represent all prisoners of war during the conflict. Now, continuing with the signing process, the fourth person to sign would be Admiral Chester Nimitz, who would sign for the United States. Following him would be representatives from China, Great Britain, the Soviet Union, Australia, Canada, France, the Netherlands, and then New Zealand in that order. The ceremony that began at 9:02 would conclude at 9:25. It would take only 23 minutes to end World War II. A war in which over 69 million lives were lost. And that's a rough estimate from the European and Pacific theater. And 50 million of those casualties were civilians. Now the plaque enshrined in the teak deck not only represents where the table stood that day, but it is also to commemorate all the lives lost for victory and peace. Now following the ceremony, MacArthur had one more speech left to give. He had to inform the American public of the news. And since it was the 1940s, his message would be broadcasted over the radio, and he would speak these infamous words. Today, the guns are silent. A great tragedy has ended. A great victory has been won. The skies no longer rain death. The seas bear only commerce. Men everywhere walk upright in the sunlight. The entire world lies quietly at peace. And that would be the conclusion of World War II. So I'll give you folks a few minutes to look around, take some photographs. In the plexiglass case is a replica copy of the Instrument of Surrender, and that open doorway is a peek inside the captain's import cabin. And I'll be around if you have any questions. Thank you.
That's why they came out of there.
So that's actually a replica copy of 1853 on the very spot. So 1853 is significant because that is the year the U.S. first. So we had the original flag there that day to represent us getting back to being allies and trade representing Japan. And that's why there's only 31 stars. It's right after California became a state.
So there were 31 at this time.
In 1853.
So California has become a state at the time.
So this is a replica copy of the 1853 Commodore Perry's flag. That's the year the U.S. purchased the flag. So we had the original flag there that day to represent us getting back to being allies and trade.
Okay, it's your Lawrence.